floods, it's everything that's going wrong. And how you react is how the two people beneath you are going to react. And that's how you build the culture.
None of us become who we're meant to be alone. Every story has people who helped write it. So let's talk about them. Welcome to the Mentor Sessions.
Josh, welcome to the Mentor Sessions. Happy to have you here today. Go ahead and start and tell us a little bit about yourself.
So I'm Joshua Jordan, and I own American Rooter and Drain here in Caldwell, Idaho. And a little bit about me is I grew up in the trades. I am the youngest of 10, and so when I was a kid, my my brothers were teaching me how to actually fix appliances at like 5 years old. And the reason why is when I was 3, my dad passed away. And so the biggest mentors, teachers in my life happened to be my brothers, my mom, my sisters that they really had to step up. And so we grew up in the trades and have a company here with about 50 employees, and just love to teach, and so wanted to be on your show.
I appreciate that, and I'm glad you're here. And we were talking a little bit before we started, and you've got a lot of life experiences in your background. Before you started in the trades and helping with the your customers and stuff like that, as you're being raised by your brothers, what was that like? What was that experience like?
Yeah, so the age difference between my oldest brother and me is about 17 years, and he really stepped up. So he had to drop out of high school after my dad died. And I tell this story, but my mom, if I was riding around with her, she used to say, when you'd see like old appliances on the side of the house, she'd say, "Hey, Mijo, go ask them if we can have that." And what we'd do is we'd pick it up, throw it in the truck, and fix it in our garage. And that's how we actually paid our bills. That's how we ate and basically just survived. And that term is rather loose because it really was just survival, just enough to eat. Um, but growing up with my brother, at about 7 years old, I moved in with him because where we lived just wasn't a good neighborhood. And he had just started his family. And so my mom asked if I could live with him. And there's a reason why your kids age the way they do. So you can build that patience with them. So, um, growing up with him was a little bit rough. I don't think he understood what it was like to have kids, and then it wasn't his kid either that he was raising. So, um, that was just a kind of a tough time because I wasn't really sure where I fit in, but he had to take care of me, and so it was just work, always work, no matter what. He lived on 40 acres, so if it was a push mower of 2 acres, that was what we did, and then any other time it was fixing appliances and just helping support the family.
So you said mijo, so your mom is Latin?
She is, yeah. So my mom, she's from Mexico, um, and my dad is just the typical Oregon white guy. So I look really fair skinned, but and my mom always spoke to us in Spanish, but we'd answer in English, so I can understand it way better than I could speak it. But I can do both.
Yeah, that must have been hard for your brother to take on that mantle at pretty much a young age himself. Going from being a kid and being thrown into basically being a father figure. As you grew, what was your relationship with him like?
It starts to strain, and I kind of have a theory on this where teenagers, when they start actually figuring out that they're gonna leave the home, I think that's when they start to push back. And that's when and I think it's just ingrained in every young man especially that I have to do this so I can be my own man. And so about the time I was 17, um, that's when I was like, well, you're not my real dad, kind of attitude. And I actually think I probably gave him a hard time. Um, And it isn't until you're 25 that you're like, oh, yeah, I get it. Everything he was teaching me was actually right, and I should have listened.
Uh, Sometimes it's 25. I think my kids were a lot later on that, but that's a discussion with them. Um, as you were growing up, as you moved out, um, how did your relationship grow with? I mean, I know how it was pressured growing up, him taking that on, and you know, you're not my real dad, um, and then now you've got to step into adulthood. What was that transition for yourself like?
It's a big wake up call because leaving his house and somewhere in between there is me joining the Marine Corps, where going through boot camp, everything's stripped down. They really do break you down from they shave your head to everyone looks the same, you dress the same, and you start to understand a few things. And that's sometimes you're not even the main character in your book, you're just a part of a cog, right? And so understanding that kind of put me in my place. And I'm actually a really firm believer that I think it'd be really good for a lot of young men to join the military just to get that wake up call to realize, the sun is not revolving around you the way you think. Um, but in between that, there was just a lot of growing for me. And through that, there's two things that came out of it. Is one is I genuinely appreciated everything my brother did. And the second thing was there's still elements of him that are fairly toxic. And as I grew into even my 30s and now my 40s, as I realized there's some things that I actually don't really like about him. And those elements I don't engage with. And it's very, how are the kids? What's going on? And, but we've never been really close.
Do you think that has to do with the age difference between the two of you, or the fact he became more of a father and maybe wasn't actually a dad? Does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's both. I never wanted like I didn't ever thought he would be the guy that we'd go to football games with necessarily, but I hope my relationship with my kids is a lot closer where when they reach adulthood that they're able to come and talk about certain problems of like, that. And to come back to it is like, so this is my 20 years being married, but nobody tells you that year 5 through like 9 are pretty dang hard, and
Oh,
so
yeah.
it's impossible almost. And so I want I want to be that guy that will actually explain that to my kids. And so when they call me someday and they're like, "How did you deal with this?" I'll have some answers for them. And that relationship, that's what I mean, is that wasn't there with him. And so that's where it's a little bit different.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing because when we are outsiders looking in onto someone's relationship, um, and when my wife and I, we've been married for 31 years. You're coming into your 20-year marriage, and it's almost like it's a lot like raising a child. There are stretches, when the kids are really relatively easy to deal with, um, and then you go into the next cycle with them. You know, I joke, and very important that I mention it is a joke. When I tell people when your kid turns 11, just drown them because that that period from like 5 to 11, that's the golden age, man. And then they become teenagers, and now they want to test and try everything, and it's a whole other world. And you think, oh, when they're out of the house it's going to be easy again, and it's not easy then. It's all just new different challenges for each of them, like teaching your child how to walk, teaching your child how to use the restroom, getting them into school and teaching them how to socialize. Everything is just, it's the next step. And it's the same thing with marriage, because you hit those spots where, okay, we're comfortable with each other, and then now you're wanting to find out your individual self in this relationship. You spend the first 5 years just trying to figure out the relationship. Um, And then after a while, it's like, okay, now we got to figure out how we're doing this. We got to figure out, all right, now we have kids. How are we going to raise our kids? And then you're, it's that whole next step. And then, you know, when my kids became teenagers, and not just teenagers, but when they became those teenage years where they're starting to leave the house and hang out on Friday nights and Saturday nights, I remember looking at my wife one day, one evening that we're sitting there and just watching, vegging out on TV, and I said, we need to figure stuff out. She's like, what do you mean? I said, here shortly, the kids are going to be gone, and it's going to be you and I sitting in a room, and I don't want to look at you and be like, I don't know who you are, and nor do I want you to look at me and be like, why am I married to you? And so we've had to be you have to be intentional in taking that step as to, okay, what's this next step going to look like for us?
Yeah, and I think those first, 4 years is we are trying to still impress, and we're trying our absolute best to be that husband. And once you're sleep deprived and kids are screaming and everything, you start to let that go, and then you forget that you still got to date them.
Yeah, you have to date each other still. You still have to communicate with each other, and it's not always going to be just about the kid in front of you. It's about, hey, how are you? What's going on with you? What are you up to? What are you doing? And it's fun now because as I worked in law enforcement growing up, and I know running a business and stuff like that, it's the same way. Well, growing into our marriage, I guess is a better way to put it. You're running and hustling so much, especially just trying to meet ends meet for the family, that now that I'm doing this, I'm working from home. My wife is working from home. Now it's like, oh hey, we get to hang out and be friends again, you know? And right now with the weather being so nice, we spend our evenings on the patio and just chatting and doing our own things, but we're doing them together now and it's fun. Um, so tell me what you learned in the Marine Corps. What was your MOS and where'd you go to boot camp and then what'd you learn?
Yeah, so I went to Camp Pendleton, and I actually made it real easy on the recruiter. So I scored high on the ASVAB, and they said, you do whatever you want. And I actually went in with my brother, and this is 2005. So this is when they were making the big,
And this is a younger brother, right?
actually an
Or
older
an older
brother.
brother, but not the brother that raised you.
Right. Yep. And so we said, we just want to go infantry. We want to do our part. And they're like, no, 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 you don't understand. You could do whatever you want. And so we end up going in, and we selected like I forget, he was a 0351, but it's like a demolition type guy, and I wanted that too. I was like, we get to deal with the explosives. This is gonna be awesome. And well, I'm standing there, and there's 27 of us, and he says we need 25 volunteers. And I knew I never been that lucky. So I just step over, and they made us 0313s, which is LAV crewmen. So the LAV is an eight-wheeled armored vehicle, and I went to LAV school, and that was also in Pendleton, and eventually got attached to 3rd LAR out of 29 Palms. Which, if you've never been to 29 Palms, there's about 29 palms there, and that's about it.
Yeah, it's a desert.
Horrible. So I the unit I got attached to had just come back from Okinawa, but there was another unit, H&S company, that was going to deploy within like 3 months, and they were going to Iraq. And so I actually switched companies. I volunteered to go with them, and so my turnaround from when I got to the unit to when I deployed was about 3 months, and then I was in Iraq for 8 months.
Did you only do the one tour, or how many tours did you do? Two tours.
Yeah.
Um, you mind sharing what those experiences were like?
They changed both times. And I don't know how deep we want to go, but the frustration level kind of grew throughout, because the first time we're there, there's a certain set of rules of engagement, right? Where they're saying, hey, if bad guys shoot at you, you can return fire. but if they shoot at you and drop their guns, you cannot. And so having senators or having people that are thousands of miles away telling you what you could do was like really frustrating because they weren't there watching their brothers get hurt, and so um, I don't know what even makes me think about that except for I think age now, thinking back of like, and at the time I didn't even think of it. I was like, okay, well that makes sense, but um, there was the best way to describe that is the smell. Like as soon as you land, this hot smell just hits you, and it doesn't go away for 8 months. But we met some amazing people, and we did some really cool things. But with any war, I lost some brothers, and I wish we had them back.
When you were over there, you and we've had another Marine on the show and other service members, and he did a few deployments himself, and we went in deep about the trauma and stuff that he suffered when he came home. When you're over there, you rely so much on the person next to you, the guy next to you, and you find some of those older guys that you want to take those lessons. What were some of those lessons you learned from them that you think you still apply in your life today?
So there was this Master Guns that kind of took me under his wing, which that's a big gap because I was the Lance Corporal at the time. I was an E3. But what impressed him is most PFCs that are coming in are drivers, and you're a driver for the whole deployment, maybe even two. And I did this. I volunteered. He's like, "Who wants to shoot to see if they could be a gunner?" And I got in there, and there's like 30 things you have to do before you fire this cannon. And
It's a wire guided, isn't it?
no, this one's not. So it's a 25 millimeter
Oh,
Bushmaster
okay.
cannon. So they're like 10-inch rounds.
Yeah.
It's that thing's fun. But there's a bunch of steps, and so I get in this thing, and I had fired exactly 9 rounds in school, and we're about to deploy, and he says, "Who wants to do it?" Well, I nailed it. I hit all 30 tests, and I shoot 3 rounds because you do 3 round bursts, and all three were bullseyes. And he goes, "Okay, see if you can do that again." And I do it again, and he says, "One more time." And he gets out and he walks over to the. So, anyways, I hit 9 bullseyes, and he says, "All right, get out, clear the gun." And he walks straight over to the lieutenant and he says, "Make this guy your next gunner. He's sharp." And when we actually qualled, like the 3 weeks before we deployed, I only dropped 2 rounds out of 3 days of the range, and I missed the actual course record by one round. And so the lieutenant took me from the sergeant and made me his gunner. The reason why I tell that story is because that Master Guns never forgot me. And so whenever we were deployed, he would pull me aside and he just started telling me, "Hey, you're doing the right things. Make sure you do this, and you can move up the ranks a lot faster." And I don't know, it was just something about just his personality. Like I respected him so much, where there's so much knowledge there that you can't help but to just lean in and try to just glean as much information as you can. And he was one of those guys for me.
So as you leaned into him to learn as much as you can, did you feel like that made him more open? Like, okay, if this guy wants to learn, I want to share and I want to teach.
Oh, absolutely. And I think that's with any mentorship is if you're engaged while you're learning, it opens up the entire sky because um, there's nothing worse than hearing "I know" when you're trying to teach someone, right? It's like, well, if you know, and I've jokingly said this, but I'm like, if you knew more than me, I'd work for you.
Right.
So
No.
sometimes it's just good to listen.
Yeah, no, as I progressed in my law enforcement career and as I would kind of help train people in the jail or when they'd come over to the courts, you'd get that same thing. Some guy that just came to the courts, just came to the jail, and you'd be like, "Hey, this is what you need to know." "Oh, I know." "No, you don't know yet." Because I didn't know when I first came over. When I transferred from one facility to the other, so I started in Ogden at Weber County and then moved down to Utah County and Spanish Fork, Provo area, I had to be receptive and open to the new learning system and the new way they do things. It's not easy always, but it's what you have to do to improve and grow. And when one of my best mentors is someone that when he retired and then I retired, he helped me get the job at Curtis Blue Line, and it's because of that. I asked him, I'm like, why were you always so willing to take me under your wing? And the funny thing is, and he and I just had dinner the other night. I had a hard time trusting him because he was always too nice, and I'm sure you saw this in the military and stuff. Someone's either being too nice because they're trying to get something out of you, or they're really genuine, and it's hard to trust people that okay, what's he want from me? This isn't how we treat people around here. We're not genuine. We're not friendly. And he said, he's like, I always saw you wanting to learn more. You always asked the right questions. You always asked questions. You always wanted just a little more extra. And I feel like if you want the answers and I have them, why not give them to you? Kind of like your gunner sergeant. It helps those situations. I think I've never been in war, thankfully. It helps those situations just go a little bit easier.
Yeah, because it eventually he was talking to me about what to expect when you get to call home for the first time, and it was simple things like that where everybody's thinking, "Oh, is my girl running off on me?" As soon as you get to war.
Jody.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Jody. Jody's coming. And he was very much saying, "Hey, if you pick the right girl, everything's going to be good, but this is what you should expect when you call and make sure you say this." And so he was really good. And I didn't get a lot of time with him, but the time I had it was quality.
Yeah. Well, that sounds great. That sounds very valuable and important. Um, so what was it like when you first went home?
It was like dating again. I realized that this is the girl because we were high school sweethearts as well. Um, this is the girl I've known for years, and somehow I didn't know her at all. It was strange. It was really strange. And so it was. I had to learn how to ask all the questions again, like it was our first week. Like, what do you still like? What movies do you want to go watch? And what do you like to eat? And so that was a hard that was a hard change.
Yeah. Yeah, I can imagine. Um, what was it like for her?
She said I was different, and I think that's the nice way of saying like you're kind of an a-hole now. And the thing is it was simple things would kind of set me off, and so when you're at war, when you're in Iraq, like vehicles have to get out of the road. And if a vehicle's coming at you fast, it means they're coming to try to blow you up.
Right.
And so road ragers, it would put me on edge. People that tailgated, people that cut me off. And so it was little things like that she was just watching, and she was like, "Why are you getting so mad? What's wrong with you?" And how do you describe that? Like, this guy's too close, is he's going to blow us up? You can't say that, right? And so um, I had to learn how not everything, like, don't let the adrenaline kick up that high. I had to learn how to actually um, acclimate back to civilian.
That's that's not easy to do, um, especially coming from a high adrenaline area. You know, uh, I mean, there were. My wife talked about how we'll talk about how much I changed when I got into law enforcement, and then over time, and uh, you look at the world a lot differently than before then. Um, and being at war has that same effect on you. I would assume from what I've learned, because you don't what used to be the unexpected to you, like the car cutting you off is full of gunmen going to shoot you. That before you went, that was the unexpected. But now that's the expected now. That's where your mind is. And having to make that shift and make that change. How long do you think it took you till you finally felt settled back into civilian life?
Uh, Talking to my wife later on, I think it was a good year. And the bad thing is only to then start getting back to it is when we deploy again. So you're usually about a year in between.
That's what my next question was. You're there for a year, you start getting acclimated, and then it's like go time, and you got to turn it all up back on.
Yeah. And you know what's crazy is they don't actually talk about what it does to your body. So like being a gunner, on especially on the lieutenant's vehicle, we were the first vehicle, and I'm scanning the road for IEDs all day long. And the country itself of Iraq is it's pretty trash. There's bags everywhere, and I'm looking for trash bags that look funny with wires or a plate on the road. And so we'd be going 40, 50 miles per hour, and at any given moment, I could scream, stop, and my driver would slam on the brakes. Sometimes there's nothing, sometimes there's an ID. We had to actually call, EOD out. But every single bag I saw, I'd feel my heartbeat go, and that was all day. And so to think about getting adrenaline spikes like that for 9 straight months, I don't even know what it would do to people's body, but it can't be that healthy, you know what I mean?
That's one of the biggest problems, and I think that's why we see a lot of uh, cardiovascular deaths and vets and stuff like that is, and in law enforcement, you go from nothing to being on edge in a heartbeat, and I don't think our bodies are meant to really do that too much, and then when it happens, it does take a toll. That's where, from my studies and understanding, and if someone's watching and corrects me, please leave a comment. But that's where we get stuff like, the cortisol spikes and all those things in our body that start screwing with our mind, and that trauma just latches on, and then it's hard. You you see something in the road, and instead of thinking like, what idiot dropped that in the road, you're like, what is that? Because we had to start learning that stuff towards the end of my career. Hey, a bag of garbage in the road may not be just a bag of garbage in the road, and it could be a booby trap of some sort. I've yet to hear of cops killed by IEDs in the States, and pray that it never happens, but there's booby traps and stuff like that they do to try to ambush cops and stuff. So you went on your second deployment. Now you're the older guy. You're the experienced guy. How did you go into that deployment at that point?
So that one was a lot more relaxed. So that was training the Iraqi police to take over. And so the action is way down, but at this point it is mentoring the other guys. And I still don't really know what sparked it, but I was always one of the guys, especially training, and probably the best example of this is leading up to it, is in 29 Palms, there's places to get a haircut, places to get tattoos, and places to get a car at 30% interest. And that's it. And they're just back to back to back. And so I started teaching these young Marines how to do finance, how to actually save their money. Because I'd tell them, hey, you're not going to be able to spend any money while you're deployed. So you're going to come back, you're going to be sitting on 15 to 20 grand. Do not go to this dealership. And let me tell you why. And so I started teaching them what 20%, 30% interest looks like on a car. And especially like, it'd be like a 98 Mustang with flames on it that looked cool, but it was a
Right.
total piece of crap, you know?
It's a 98 with flames on it, and it looks great, but it's got a shop V6. The gearbox is stripped, and
And so I started just teaching them because I didn't want them to fall into the trap of every other unit. So every other unit I'd be talking to them, and the same thing. They're driving these jacked up trucks that they paid $10,000 more than what book was. And that was one thing that my brothers taught me is I've always been really observant, and very critical and untrusting of everyone. So if somebody is gonna sell me something, I'm like, "What's your angle here?" I don't believe it.
Sure.
So that's where it started. I just started just talking, and we started going through it, and that really helped. I also had a rule: don't marry a stripper. I'm sorry if that one offends you, but it's like uh, there was probably 20 divorces that I saw the guys going through because they went to the strip club and then they're like, I'm in love. And so I just started telling them about that. I'm like, hey, this if this is gonna be the mother of your kids, where do you want to meet them? Where would you want that woman at? Now go there, and that's where you're gonna find them.
Yeah, I mean that's great advice. Uh, we had the joke amongst cops is that when you're training new cops, you don't date nurses, uh, other cops, and dispatchers. Um, but that's where people gravitate towards are nurses, other cops, and dispatchers. And when you see marriages fail and people have affairs, it's usually one of those three categories too. Um, because you start thinking, my wife at home doesn't get me. She doesn't understand what it's like to go through all this. I can't talk to her about it, but I can talk to, you know, Jane Smith over here. She knows what that's like. She's an ER nurse. She sees it too. She's a cop too, or and so yeah, I'd always tell cops the same kind of things. The young guys like, yeah, you don't do that. Um, Now there are those that it's worked out and it's been successful and great, and I'm glad for that. But it sucks that so many of those have struggled, and we have to make those rules. Like yeah, that stripper, she doesn't love you like you think she loves you. She loves that she's going to be getting a paycheck while you're gone.
Exactly.
And that's where you meet Jody. In the jails, it was Sancho. And the funny thing is I didn't know that at first, and some dude, he was really beat up, and I was like, "What's going on, man?" He's like, my wife took off with Sancho," and I was like, "Who's Sancho?" Just a buddy of mine, and I didn't know Sancho was the same as a Jody. That's the dude that snuck in while you were unavailable. Um, and so it cracked me up. And once I learned that, and it's in I think it's the Sublime song. They mention Sancho and stuff like that. So it cracks me up that we all have that person out there that's watching over your shoulders. You were talking about financial literacy and how important that is, and one of the guests I was talking to, as she works with people struggling with homelessness and housing and food security, that's one of the things she tries to teach them. She tries to teach them what credit is, what APR means, what compound interest is, how to fill out a bank form, and she talked about how, um, yeah, you get your money. That doesn't mean you go and cash it out so you can flash it on social media that you got your EBT money or whatever. And I don't think you can cash out EBT. Again, I live in a bubble. Um, but you don't flash your money. Go put it in the bank. Go earn that interest. Set a budget, and she helps people learn how to do these things because a lot of us, myself included, a lot of us don't learn those things. Thankfully, I married an accountant who taught me these things. But I remember, when we were newlyweds before we had kids, and we were living in Utah, it was payday, and I just got paid. There might have been some overtime on there, but as we were going south on the I-15, it said Saint or Las Vegas. And I was like, let's go. And she's like, no. I'm like, I just got paid. Let's go. And she goes, we also have to pay rent. We also have to pay the water bill. She's like, you think you have that money, but you don't. And teaching that financial literacy, I think, is something that we don't learn like we should. And it takes having um, parents and a lifestyle. And I'm sure it was probably kind of hard watching you grow up with You're living with your brother, but also you're living with a mom that was just surviving, scraping by. If she got $50, it probably like I'm spending the $50, but not like we see it as, you know. Um, how did those lessons affect your guests, or not your guests? I'm sorry. How did those lessons affect your Joes and your juniors?
Kind of, and but you always know which one is leaning in. And to that, so I'm actually currently teaching a finance class, and it's going to be a three-part to the guys in my business. And I think there's 26 of them in there. But on lesson one, this is what I told them. I said, I need this filled out for lesson two. And if you don't fill out, you're not going to be able to stay in the class. And the reason why is I think people devalue what one they don't pay for or two they didn't earn. And so I don't want to be the guy that's sitting there trying to lecture them or have this tell them that they're doing something wrong. I want it to be very much, hey, I'm going to give you something and you tell me something back and we're going to work through this thing together. And so it'll be interesting because tomorrow's actually the day to see how many filled it out, how many are going to lean in. But the ones that do, I give it my all. Like I actually think and I don't know, this could be bad, but there's times I care more about them than I do me because they're leaning in. And I say that it could be bad because people that are givers will always find people that are takers. And I've been on that's happened so much in my life that I didn't even realize that people were just taking advantage because I'm so willing to give. And so I have to now charge, meaning like you do the homework and you can come to the class. And that's not even a big, that's not a big charge,
Right.
but they have to do something.
You take a Dave Ramsey course and you're paying a lot of money. You're asking, hey, just do the homework. What made you? Is this the first time you've instituted a program like this?
No, this is actually the third round. But in the trades, you get a lot of turnover because guys will realize I don't really like dealing with other people's crap, right? Like nobody actually likes that. And so it's just kind of part of the game. And I actually had to learn this too, is even though you said something once to one person, we automatically assume that everybody should know it. I said that once, and that's not the case. And we don't know what their mindset was when you told them anyways. Maybe they could have been had their head in the clouds because they were thinking about something else. And so I've made it a point where I just repeat stuff all the time, especially the really good things. So if we do this finance class, I'll do another one in 6 months and act like it's brand new. And if they can just glean a little bit more information, then it's working.
Yeah. What made you decide to take this on and offer this to your employees?
You know, I kind of assumed you would ask that question, and I was thinking of the mentors in my life, and I think, and I'll just revert it back to, I think your dad as a whole will either influence you for good or influence you for bad, meaning like you're either going to want to be just like them or you'll want to be the exact opposite. And I didn't have a ton of mentors. And so I wanted to be that mentor. I always used to say, I wish somebody would have taught me this when I was your age. And I actually told all of them just last week, as I said, I wish I had me at your age because I would have just leaned in. I would have took any information that I had. And I think that's my driving force is the fact that I wanted it so bad that I'm gonna do it.
So you were the Marine that bought the '98 Mustang at 30% interest, is what you're saying.
No, luckily I didn't do that. So I was good with money before, but I got married right after my first deployment, and so all of my deployment money went into the wedding, and I was broke 2 days. So we got married. Uh, it was like 2 weeks after I got back from Iraq, but I didn't know that you had to wait around for a week to decompress. They won't let you just go home. And so I almost missed my own wedding because my wife had been planning it the whole 9 months. And so when they released me, I had one day to go get fitted for a tux, and the next day was the wedding. And from that point, it was okay, now we need a couch, now we need everything. And just like that, I was broke again.
Right. Right. It's like when you bring your kids home for the first time.
Exactly.
You know, oh, I had money. Oh, what do you mean? I need 6 boxes of diapers and onesies and blankets and stuff like that. A crib and a changing table. I don't know what a changing table is. Yeah. So that's very awesome. When you teach these courses, do you invite like their spouses in with them too to come and listen if they're married or have a spouse or a partner?
So we've given the offer, and in fact, I had two different guys that said, "I need my wife to be here." Like I don't even know what you're talking.
I'd be that guy. I would be that guy.
And so we give the offer, but we also do it at 7 a.m. And most of the guys are also like, "Well, my wife doesn't get up before 9, so good luck with that."
Yeah, I've had early mornings because I've been interviewing people different time zones and stuff. So this whole week it's been great. I'm excited about it. But my mornings have been so dang early that I'll go in, I'll finally get done, and she's still in bed. I'm like, man, I'm so jealous, you know, because I'll be up late all night preparing and everything, and then when I crawl into bed and she's already out, and I'm like, I just want that little more sleep. So yeah, I get that. So what kind of success rate are you having with your employees?
Well, let me just tell you a story of one of the kids. So he actually came to work for me when he was 16, and he's a sharp kid, but he had already graduated, so he's passing all the classes, and he wanted to get into the trades. He's 20 now, still works for me. He has two different rentals, and he's married, and the kid is just thriving. And so, but all of that stemmed from having those conversations with the 16-year-old saying, hey, you're going to start making more money. The better you get at this trade, you're going to start getting paid more. And I don't want you driving, a piece of crap car with spinners on it or something, right? And so he really leaned into it. And his very first thing he bought was a duplex. And he kind of fixed it up, and now then he rented it out, and then he bought another house. And that's the kind of success, which again, it's you're probably still at like 10 to 20% that it really changes. But we talk about this every day. And I mean literally every day. I say, how are we going to change your family tree? What are we doing today that's going to change your family tree? And so it's just a numbers game. If I can get that number to 3 or 4 guys, that's huge. I'd be happy with one, but if I can get touch 3 or 4 different lives, it'll change their life forever.
That's such a powerful question to ask because that can go into so many different spheres in people's lives. Um, for some, and it's financial. They watch their parents struggle. They watch their parents living paycheck to paycheck, making ends meet. For others, it's their lifestyle and what they were raised in and the abuse they suffered and stuff like that. And one of the things that made me realize I needed to retire from law enforcement. I was the bailiff in the court, and this kid came in. And he's like, "Hey, you're Coyle, right?" And I was like, "Yeah." "Hey, my mom and grandma told me to tell you hi." And I was like, "Well, who are they?" And the fact that I had been doing the job long enough that um, I dealt with grandma, mom, and I kind of remember when this kid was a youngster coming in to visit his mom, and now he's there. It's like, all right, you're seeing the generational trauma where people aren't changing their family tree.
And what if we can flip it from going the wrong direction to actually like literally changing it? The interesting thing about that young man is three of other brothers all work for us too. And so I have four of the brothers, but their dad was a long haul trucker that just drove. He was almost never there. They have a pretty big family, and they're making and again it's not the money, but they're setting themselves up. They all have um, they're married, they have kids, they're building the life that they wanted, that their dad they wanted their dad home, they wanted, and they're actually creating that life, and that's powerful. And so every day I get up and I judge my success, not after like whether or not we made money, it's how many lives did I actually affect? How many people did I touch today that they're going to be better off having known me? And I think that's when that's your mission, you start looking at everybody a little bit different. You want to mentor everybody.
Yeah, well, when that's your mission, it gives you a totally different outlook on life because we do chase so much of the accolades of life, the promotions, the not trashy jacked up truck with the spinners, the nice version of that, you know. I like to call it like the big boy version of that truck. Um, I was so excited when I got the truck that I have now, and I call it my grandpa truck because that's what it is. It's not jacked up, it does everything I need it to do, and it's paid for, and it's a grandpa truck, and I love it, and I love that title of it. That's what that is. Um, and that was, you asked me before the show, like, what made you want to do this? And it was one of those things where, when I was in law enforcement, I knew I was making a difference in someone's life. I would have those people tell me, "Hey, thanks for being there. Hey, thanks for listening. Um, hey, thanks for keeping me safe." You know, uh, in the court and stuff like that. Um, I had an attorney where the two attorneys from opposite ends were getting into a heated shouting match, and I was like, "Go for a walk. You need to." And that attorney came back to me and repeatedly said, "You saved my career because if I had kept going, it would have gotten really bad. You saved my career." So it's those moments like, "Hey, I did something good today." Um, that I think if more people started chasing those and the impact that they're having with their employees and the impact that they're having in the world, I think we'd have a lot different world we live in instead of chasing uh, the gold at the end of the rainbow. Basically, I was talking the other day on one of my social media posts. I said we always think about what's the destination, and we forget the journey is the adventure. That's where we need to enjoy, but we need to enjoy impacting people's lives. And I appreciate that message and the work that you've done. Um, what are some other things that you've done to work to impact other people's lives?
Probably the best class to date that I've ever done. Um, I actually brought my wife in, and we did a Q&A with everybody. And because a lot of these guys are hearing the same things that my wife asked. Like, why do I feel like a single mom? You work all the time. Why do you have to um, go fishing on the weekend and leave me alone? And why don't we date anymore? And after 20 years, I'd like to think we got it figured out, but I think we got a lot more adventures, me and my wife, right? But so we brought her in, and they got to ask her, how did he how did he get you across the finish line on that issue? What did you guys do? And so she started answering them. And think about it, if you could actually ask your wife, "Hey, what's bothering you?" and they were honest. That's what they got with my wife. And so it was huge. Like a bunch of the guys came back and they said, "Can she come back in? Will she do that again?" Because it was asking their wife, but asking my wife the questions. And so the relationship class, we've done that one. Um, I did I don't know if you ever read the book Greatness. It's
Sure sounds familiar.
it's an all white book, and he talks about how he was working with I want to say like Tim Duncan, and I think he worked with Michael Jordan at one
Okay.
point.
Okay, I know who you're talking about now.
Book we I bought the book for everybody in the company, and we literally read it chapter by chapter over probably 10 days, and then we debriefed on the book. What does this mean? How do we become great? So we've done that 3 different times with 3 different books. We did Miracle Morning, which was an awesome book. Did Greatness, and then we did David Goggins' book, Can't Hurt Me. And so all those things I keep doing with all these guys because, again, I think that chip on my shoulders, I just wish somebody would have done it for me.
Wow, I'm going back to my limited experience in the trades. Like I said, when I was first married, I thought I wanted to be a plumber, and so one of my first jobs was in a shop like yours, and the morning conversations were nothing like you're describing it with your guys. Um, I would never, and knowing some of the people I worked with and their limited education and their limited life backgrounds, I was one too. I was a freaking newlywed with 1 year old twins at home. Well, they weren't even a year old by that point. Um, you talk about the 16-year-old and his brothers that work for you now, and I'm astounded you got a 16-year-old to listen to you at all. So kudos to that. I have to ask, and you mentioned, I wish I had someone like that when I was that age, when I was growing up. You lost your dad. You didn't get to experience that. You were being raised by a single mom and then by a brother who also lost his dad. Um, and then you went to the Marine Corps, and I think that's probably where a lot of your life education came from, was in the Marine Corps and those leaders and mentors that you had there. When you bring these guys into the shop, do you explain to them what they're getting here and that it's not just going to be you come to work, you go home, but you're bringing them into your home and your family?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So if you came into our shop, it would be the cleanest plumbing company you've ever seen. Like it's everything. Everything's just clean. It's organized. But I have a rule, and it's fairly simple. If I wouldn't let this person take my kids fishing, they don't work there. So the baseline is they have to be just a good person. Because I can teach you how to plumb. I can teach you how to fix something. I can teach you almost anything having to do with business. But I can't teach you to be a good person if it's not already ingrained. If you don't want it. And so with that being said, it changes everything. The dynamic's way different. Because of that, everybody leans in and then we hold each other accountable. So I put a full gym upstairs above all my offices, and the guys that actually show up and work out, if they miss a day, you better believe they're like, "Hey, where were you? We missed you. You better get in there. I don't care what your excuse was." And that kind of brotherhood, it changes the entire culture of the business. And companies talk about culture all the time,
Right.
and I don't think they understand what that means. It's just a word. It's just what is the culture? Where I tell my guys, the culture is not with me, it's what you're doing. When I'm not watching, that's the culture that actually is growing. And so you have to mind what you say, how you react to problems, especially because every day is a problem. We're fighting fires, it's emergency service. It's floods, it's everything that's going wrong. And how you react is how the two people beneath you are going to react. And that's how you build the culture. You don't do it from just saying, like, oh, we have a good culture. Let me put this on a radio ad.
So if I could ask, what's your turnover like?
Um,
Like you said, not everybody wants to chase toilets all day long.
yeah, so that's an awesome question. We still get pretty good turnover. However, it's always one of two things. One is they'll say, "Hey, my dream," and this actually is a true story. One young man said, "I want to be a cop," and he told us that for 3 years. And I said, "When are you going to do that?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know. I really like this job." And if this isn't like a form of love, I don't know what is, but I fired him so he could go chase his dream. And I wanted to keep him. He was great. But I'm just such a believer that our time is so limited, that's so precious time is, that if not now, when?
Yeah.
And if not me, then who? And so I actually fired him so he could go do it, and it was really cool because like 2 months ago, so he had to start in the prison, and then 2 months ago he just messaged me and he says, "Hey, I'm officially a cop," and I said, "All right, let me know, or I'll let you know if I'm driving through that city, so to make sure you don't pull me over or something." I said,
Where's he a cop at?
Parma.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Did when you said, "Hey, I'm firing you," was it so you can go do this?
Oh yeah, oh yeah, and that's happened a few times. I swear there's more ex-employees that reach out to me than current because they're like, hey, you changed my life and you pushed me to be better. And I don't know, I think it's pretty cool. I like that. That really fulfills me. That fills my cup. Honestly, is hearing that stuff. And then the other guys that don't work out, it's they'll weed themselves out. I mean, it's hard being around really strong, good men all the time, where they're not talking about, um, chasing like girls, right? If they even talk like that, like, hey, I'm gonna go do this, or I got a bunch of girls, they don't work for me. And it's really that simple. It's like, hey, you have to be a good person to be here.
Yeah, man. And how long's your company been around?
So I bought the company 7 years
Are you
ago.
a franchise then?
No, no, it was so McRae has been in Idaho since 1945, and the original dad owned it, and then he passed it to three of his sons. The last son, Mike, had three daughters, and they got married and moved away, and he was ready to retire. So I actually bought the business in 2019, and since then it's just been me that's running it.
So what were you doing before this?
I was working for my sister doing HVAC here in the Treasure Valley. And I actually tried to buy their business and because they were moving to Colorado. And I don't know why they made it real difficult. And eventually I even told them, I was like, look, if you don't sell it to me now for what I'm offering, it's not going to go anywhere because I had been running it for them at that point. And yeah, sure enough, they moved away. The manager they hired ran it into the ground, and I still ended up buying it, but for like a couple of bucks at that point. So, I mean, that's just a fun story to tell because I it was still on my like my vision board. I still wanted that company, and I ended up getting it, but completely different of how I envisioned getting it.
What made you decide this is how you wanted to run your company?
If you've ever worked for any place and you just write down the things that annoy you, you'll start to find that eventually it might outweigh why you actually go there. It may come down to there's like everything here is bad. The one good is they write me a check every week. And I had been in a couple of jobs where that was exactly what it was. And I said, what if we had a company where there was 10 good things and one or two bad things? And the one or two bad things are like playing in human feces is not a fun thing. You know what I mean? Like, there's nobody that's going to say that's the fun part.
Like I said, I did that job, um, and some of the houses that I saw still haunt me. You know, growing under uh, what would they call a cellar, but it was more like a crawl space at my size, and seeing that pipe had been leaking there for a long time before either they noticed the problem, and yeah, it's not good. So that can be the worst part of the job. One of my better, funnier stories was it was Thanksgiving or Christmas Eve. I remember it was around that time, and the oh, maybe might have been Easter. Anyhow, uh, Grandma's sink was full of potato peels, and she still had a lot of cooking to do. And the sink, and that was a quick, easy fix, right? Just getting I think everything was just clogged up there in the P trap, maybe a little bit beyond. But uh, those are the houses that you go to and you're like, okay, I can do this one, you know? So, Josh, it's been phenomenal talking to you today. Um, I know I've learned a lot, and I'm sure a lot of people have learned a lot. You almost make me want to go back and work for it, but I think I'm going to stop by the shop one day and talk to you guys there because it's just what a phenomenal place and a phenomenal experience to help people grow. And, even though no matter how long they're with you, you're giving them life lessons that we want so much in life, and opportunities we all want so much in life. Um, is there anything else you want to share with the crowd?
No, well, I think every single day we get the choice of we can be great and try to actually change our family tree, or we can choose to be victims. And if you just lean in to being great, it's actually almost just as easy as being a victim, of saying, woe is me. And that's, of all my learning experiences, of all the butt kickings life has given me, that's the one thing that it's taught me is just wake up, renewed, new day, new adventure. Yeah, stuff's gonna come at you, but you just got to keep moving forward and be a good person.
Yeah.
So no, that's it. And honestly, we'd love to have you stop by. I mean, we love giving our shop tour, and
Yeah. Yeah. So the closing question I like to ask people, if they were watching right now, who's one mentor in your life that you want to thank?
it'd be my brother. Yeah, it'd be my brother. Because good or bad, he taught me everything I wanted to become. And I don't know. I think when you think of mentors, it's always for the good, but you also can learn.
You learn so much. You learn so much, and we've had a couple episodes talking about that where it's like you're learning from the people you don't want to be like. You learned the kind of shop you want to have. Okay, what if the shop has, instead of one good thing, it has 10 good things and and two or three bad things. So Josh, it's been phenomenal talking to you. I'm glad our mutual friend Mike hooked us up, so we could get to know each other. I'm deeply impressed and grateful that I have this opportunity. So thanks for coming on the mentor sessions and sharing your story. And remember, you can either wake up a victim, or you can wake up wanting to change the family tree. So take that life lesson with you today. Thank you, Josh. I appreciate you.